if you know yourself and you've actually identified a really good community fit for you, your application is likely stronger to that particular
Hmm.
college. If you've identified that community based on who you are and your values and your interests and how you think you're going to grow in this community the next 4 years, now all of a sudden I've made a pretty powerful application case, right?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Office Hours. My name's Will Geiger, co-founder of Scholarships 360, where we're breaking down the latest trends in college and higher education and what those trends mean for students and parents. Really excited about today's guest, Andrew Linnehan, who's the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Northwestern University. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. Excited to jam for the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, yeah. Andrew, for those who don't know you, would you be able to just give a quick intro, just a little bit about your background in admissions?
Yeah, so my name's Andrew Linnehan, Senior Associate Director of Admission at Northwestern University, which is uh, top tier national university just north of Chicago, a couple few miles outside the city border. I first got to know Northwestern in the college search process. I graduated Northwestern in 2005 from the School of Journalism. I really wanted to be a sports broadcaster and went into that after graduating, and then found my way back into admissions, and I oversee our marketing and communications production here as well. So in an admission office, usually full-time staff members will recruit students like you. They'll read applications and make admission decisions for the university, but then they also have these functional areas or tertiary responsibilities. And so mine is kind of overseeing our marketing and communications outfit. I've been in the office for 16 years now.
No, awesome, Andrew. Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. I think a lot of really great experience to draw from. I know that for a lot of students and parents out there, might be either students who are juniors or parents of juniors who might be beginning their process. And want to start out with a question about the biggest myth you believe that juniors have about college admissions today.
Yeah, I think that the real change in the last 5 to 10 years in college admissions, and it's always been there, but I think the rise of technology, social media, all of that has just made college admissions and the college choice just so noisy and chaotic. And I feel for 16-year-olds now trying to navigate this because there are so many myths. Like the biggest myth is that there's so many of them that they're asked to absorb and navigate through, well, what's actually true and what's not. I think the confluence of what a lot of those myths are is what I would argue, what I think is the biggest myth is that there is this template that if you follow in your high school career, if you do this and you do that and you do this and you add these things up and compile this kind of, certain resume, then you are admitted to school X, right? And the more we dig in and unpack over the next 30 minutes, the more students that are using primary sources and leaning on factual information in the process, the more they'll realize that that's a complete myth, right? There is not a magic template to get in almost anywhere, any of the 4,000 plus colleges in America. We haven't even talked about the world yet, right? But it will keep it in America for the sake of this conversation. And even within schools, that there is not necessarily a template from school to school, right? So like I can't identify, okay, I want to go to school X. This is what I have to do to be admitted. There are things that you can control that will certainly make you competitive in a process. But you can't say anyone who tells you if you do this and this and this and this, then you check off these 8 boxes, then you'll be admitted to school X. That is more than likely not the case in most college admission processes in America.
Yeah, I think that's such a great reminder. Sometimes I see on like Instagram or TikTok, like students breaking down, like, this is like what got me into
Yeah.
Harvard or Stanford or Northwestern or U Chicago or whatever. And it's just, yeah, it's missing just so much of the context and so much what's going on in admissions offices where, you really don't know like exactly why, what factors like went into your decision. And I think students sometimes forget that college admissions, it's like it's in the context of an applicant pool and institutional priorities, not just you. And that's, I think, it's a tough thing. I think you'd want to think it is just like based off of you, but it is just like this process where it's relative to others and to the institution. And I think in some ways, hopefully, that's empowering for students, just because it means that the best thing to do is just to be yourself and to follow your interests and your passions, and have your application reflect that.
100%. And we'll get a lot into that. I think what you just said is so true, and we'll get, a lot of my answers and our conversation will revolve around that, because it's so true. It's just often so overlooked, and it's so hard to stay grounded in that
Yeah,
belief, right? Because of, you know, uncle at the family barbecue telling you something else, and you're like, "Well, I
yeah.
don't know, like, maybe I'm 16, maybe I don't know what's going on." But this is a monumental time, objectively monumental time in a human's life, is making this decision and staying grounded and making sure that you're doing this for you and not for anyone else, or because or you're doing things because you think it might, it might be productive or might be attractive to someone else. That is not why you should do this process, right? You should do this process because it's a meaningful process to you.
No, absolutely. And I think in particular, I think it's junior year is just like a great time to you know start thinking about this, start asking big questions, thinking about your preferences, what you like, what you don't like, when it comes to your education, what you want your future to be. And I think sometimes it's hard to advise students in a way where I'm not putting like even more pressure on like this, like you need to figure everything out by the end of junior year. I think it's like more of an opportunity, and I'm curious from your perspective, like why you think junior year is such a important time for students, and like maybe like so some ways that students can think about the process in a healthy, constructive way.
Yeah, the blessing and the curse of these universal applications, the common application, coalition application, when they started coming about, it was like, oh, this is great. This makes it easier to apply to multiple colleges, right? I can fill out my biographical information once, I can fill out my activities once, and then I can disseminate and distribute those apps to a number of different schools. And that was really nice for the user experience, but it also kind of expanded applicant pools at a lot of these colleges, right? So colleges, the amount of space in these colleges didn't go up, but and the number of students necessarily applying to college wasn't necessarily going up at the rate that applicants to a particular school were going up, right? And so when the colleges experience these growing applicant pools because of a universal application, now all of a sudden colleges had to start thinking a little more critically about, well, does this student actually want to come to us, or are they just checking off a box on the Common App and applying to 15 different schools, 20 different schools, right? And so bring that around to why junior year becomes important, is it's become increasingly um, more important to know about your college choices and college lists a little earlier in the process, because you'll find that at a lot of these colleges that start becoming of interest to you, you'll find that a lot of them are it's strategically beneficial to apply earlier, right? And so on the college side, we like to offer early programs because we can set our class or certain proportions of our class early. But because of that, it's no longer, oh, I can start this college search process summer between my junior and senior year, or I can wait till October my senior year and then start thinking, oh, what are these January 1st deadlines in the middle of my senior year? It's like, no, you might want to know about these colleges a lot earlier than that. So to your point, it's not necessarily about having everything figured out junior year, but it is starting to prepare yourself with the things that are fairly easy as long as you're thinking about it. It's starting to prepare yourself for like what type of environments and communities that I want, and start identifying colleges that might be of interest to you, so then you can spend the summer between your junior and senior year actually going through that strategy of like, okay, here are my 8, 10, 12 schools. Now let me start like thinking about how I navigate the application process for those schools. Cause one of them might be a September 15th deadline, and I need to know where this
Mhm.
school might rank in my list, right? So junior year is a great time to not necessarily worry about that kind of stuff. But again, doing this process right is thinking about yourself first. So being introspective, start identifying like, I always say like ask that follow-up question too, right? So like who are my friends? Why are they my friends? Who are my favorite teachers? Why are they my favorite teachers? The silver lining of the pandemic to me, putting on my marketing and communications hat, is it has never been easier to dig into these communities, these schools and these communities. I'm sure we'll talk more about this later too, but um, being able to think critically about where you actually fit, because something that goes overlooked so much in this college search process and college application process is if you know yourself and you've actually identified a really good community fit for you, your application is likely stronger to that particular
Mhm.
college, because that particular college is looking for people that fit that college. They have a lot of things to think about when they're building that community. And so our when they're asking the question, does this student fit into our community? If you've identified that community based on who you are and your values and your interests and how you think you're going to grow in this community the next 4 years, now all of a sudden I've made a pretty powerful application case, right? As I'm filling out an application based on true fit to me, not trying to say like, oh, I want to go to a good school, and so let me look up US News and World Report and apply to those top 20 schools, right? So that's where junior year I think really starts coming into
Mhm.
play, is those easy things that sometimes you don't think about. Is think about the things that go beyond number of study abroad opportunities or the view book that's getting sent to me in the mail. Start following a bunch of colleges on social media. Start signing up for digital events to colleges that have, the academic area or specialty that you're interested in, right? These take the brand names off and just start thinking about what do I want in a community, and now I'm going to start getting to know these different communities and start figuring out should that be on my final college list. So by the end of your junior year, now you're starting to get a sense of the schools you're really interested in.
Yeah, no, I think that totally agree. I think there's a lot of really great advice in there. I think just acknowledging the process has gotten earlier and earlier, and that can have implications for both admissions and also scholarships as well, where many schools will have priority deadlines for scholarships. So like that could just potentially be like tens of thousands of dollars you're missing out on if you miss an earlier deadline, and you're able to lay a lot of that groundwork as a junior. I know like as we're talking now, it's just still January. Thinking about something like spring break coming up, I always like to recommend for students like even if you're not able to like visit schools, your tip top choice schools that are far away, there's probably schools in your local area that are worth visiting and can at least give you a sense of like how you feel about like that model. So maybe, there's a small liberal arts college, like a big public university, like a medium-sized private school, and just like starting to get a sense in, in both in person and virtually, like what these communities are like. Um, and you have a lot of time to kind of figure out those preferences.
Totally.
Um, I'm curious I know we were just talking about fit, and this idea that colleges like want students who want to be on their campus, who are excited about attending. From your vantage point as an admissions officer, how are you thinking about what fit means in a practical sense as you're reading an applicant? And obviously, this will vary a little bit from college to college, just because every college is different.
Yeah, and I think you can pick up on if you start thinking about how colleges are talking to you, when they're living in your email inboxes, when they're sending you print materials, when they're advertising digital, student panels or whatever. Like you'll start to get a sense of what they deem as fit, right? Like most colleges are trained to kind of talk a little bit, yes, in general, and a lot of us fall into the trap of like kind of being the big infomercial and starting to sound the same after a while. But there are nuances in a school's communication to you that starts
Hmm.
telling you a little bit about their community. And there are objective things about these communities that will tell you things about their community, right? Like, do they have big time Division 1 athletics? There's probably some semblance of school spirit on that campus that that school deems as valuable, right? Hey, we want a student that's not just going to come here, and it would take Northwestern, right? Is not going to come
Hmm.
here and be in the library 24 hours a day, even though we're a really rigorous top tier academic university where our degree means a lot, right? Like we play in the Big Ten. It's one of the most powerful athletic conferences in America. We want students who are gonna like go to a football game because we don't need them to be interested in football necessarily. We don't need them to know what a post is on the football field. We just need them to understand the value of school spirit because that's part of the value proposition that we provide, right? It's not just, oh, we're a US News and World Report top 10 institution, right? Well, of those top 10 institutions, we also offer big time Division 1 athletics. So what would be a nuance or a value of this experience is, okay, well, I understand what school spirit means, right? It's one of the
Hmm.
biggest values that I had in my experience here is it's a bunch of smart, ambitious, turbocharged, intellectually curious individuals. They're all around you, but they want to talk to you and they want to get along with you. That's partially what school spirit does, right? A powerful alumni network is sometimes as a result of school spirit. So school spirit, because of big time sports, is maybe one thing that you might notice that a school's talking to you a lot about, right? They're putting athletics in their view book or on their webs front and center on their website,
Yep.
or you pick up a flyer at a college fair, right? Okay, that's one thing. Others might talk to you about a really flexible curriculum or a liberal arts education. Like, what does that mean, exposing yourself to a lot of different subjects? Well, let's say I'm undecided, right? If that I always say to students all the time, like, that's okay, that's an answer to what are you interested in, right? That helps you down the college search because you don't want to necessarily go to a program that you think you might like this academic area and never expose yourself to anything else that you might be interested in, because you think you like this subject and you're not 100% sure. Like, not knowing, okay, now I want to start digging into what these schools curricula are, and they'll tell you about that too, right? So there's like so many different things if you start paying attention beyond. Like, my challenge for you all would be, don't necessarily try to like make a decision based on like school X tells me that there's 154 study abroad opportunities.
Yeah.
School Y tells me there's 162 opportunities. And so, like, oh, that one's better, right? Like, start right reading between the lines as to like, what are the actual parts of this community that this school is talking to me about? This school is listing percentage of first generation students on their website or on their brochure, and they're having a student panel with all first generation students to talk about a first generation student's experience on campus. More than likely, they value that perspective on their campus, right? And so we're going to start paying attention to those kinds of things. And then the colleges are constantly telling you, subtly or not so subtly sometimes, what they value. And if
Hmm.
back to understanding yourself before you identify the communities that value the same things as you, and now all of a sudden you're identifying communities that will be really kind of special to you and valuable to you in your 4 years in college.
Yeah, that's I think a great reminder for students just as you're looking and like you're someone who's like do this for a living as far as the, enrollment marketing and the brochures and emails and everything. And there is a lot of like meaning and intent and thought behind that. And I think for a lot of schools, like they're telling you who they are and not necessarily trying to appeal to every single person, and that's okay. And also appreciate calling out there's you know some of the some of the like the study abroad thing is a great example of like how you should not choose a college. And even just I think because this college is like number 5 on US News and this college is number 3, the number 3 is obviously better. It's like I don't even know what those schools are but right now, but maybe, but you should, it's like they're both like excellent schools, I'm sure. And you're going to be pick the one where you're going to be you'd be happy, you're just going to be more successful, you're going to have a more enriching college experience. And I think even for you know picking based off of like one factor, if that factor changed, would you still like the school? I know one of my roommates was a lacrosse coach, and just used to say something to the extent of like for a student athlete, like if you're no longer able to play that sport, like would you still want to come to the school? And I think
Yeah.
that's a good thought exercise. Maybe you're picking a school for one, you like the dining hall or whatever, they have good food, and it's like that's important, but that's probably not like a complete reason to choose an institution.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, and it's not even you don't even blame students for doing that because again, it's the noise and the chaos talking about that kind of stuff, right? It's the colleges not doing a good enough job trying to figure out how to convey the actual values of the college experience, right? And it's the outside world saying like picking like objective things, tangible things that are like easy to latch onto. And like at the end of the day, I think you would survey a lot of college graduates and they're not saying like the thing that changed me the most for the rest of my life and for my professional, you know, career or whatever was like the Tempur-Pedic beds that I slept on
Yeah.
for 4 years in the dorm room, right? Like it's the people that they go to college with. It's even like beyond the faculty. There's so much. So the faculty absolutely thinks, people to consider and concepts to consider and what you're going to be learning in class and what, you're going to be getting your degree in absolutely important. But so much of college is not in the classroom, right? And so
Mhm.
like what's happening there and with your peers and with your friends that are giving you 4 years of constant reinforcements of the character traits that you want to develop to be successful in the real world. This is a 40-year investment, not a 4-year investment. And like, if I had to do the college search process over again, that's what I would have wanted articulated to me that nobody did, right? Is like, what kinds of things should I be thinking about that like so few people are guiding me and supporting me to think about in this process, right? It's all of those things. It's not study abroad opportunities and student to faculty ratio. Like
Yeah.
they say some things. It's a little bit of an entry level data point, right? But like, oh my goodness, we're going so far beyond that in like what I want to think about in terms of what my 4-year experience is going to do for me.
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely going deeper behind. And schools, it's numbers are easy things to communicate, but you definitely need to go deeper and be, I think, like a really like it's like being like a not only a critical and thoughtful consumer of higher ed as like a product, it's just like your life and a very important launching pad. And just like the types of people you're going to be around and the alumni network, and just like thinking like really 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 broad about that. Like just actually a few right before my call prior to taping this, I so someone who just graduated from my college reached out, and he was like really like interesting entrepreneur. His like I think it was in the millions of followers on like Instagram and YouTube, and was just like looking to connect with other founders. And just like I feel like I got to learn a lot just about like social media strategy, and it was just like a really like helpful conversation. Appreciated him reaching out, but it was cool just like having that common ground, even though graduated like 15 years after me. It was just like a cool reminder, and like feeling, some gratitude of the college that I went to, and just sort of like, kind of creating this platform for interesting people, who, also um, you know, have taking the initiative to like reach out to someone else. I just thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
Um, um, I'm curious, Andrew, what are some factors that like I guess getting a little bit more tangible, like what are some factors to student, okay, I'm a junior, I'm like, okay, I'm like nodding my head, like this is awesome. That should be driving this like list creation, but students like often overlook. I guess it sounds like this, kind of fit and belonging, and like how would you go like deeper in a more like tactical way with that? If you're like a junior and like, yeah, you're like, yes, like I want a place with school spirit. I don't know, I'm attending, I love my like science classes in school and I want to study engineering. But also want maybe a college that has like a good business school or has like kind of an entrepreneurial vibe, just like making something up. Like,
Yeah.
how would you, what other factors would you encourage a student to consider or think about this?
Yeah, I think those are all like I think all the stuff that you hear about in the noise and the chaos, and the things that come naturally to you as a college bound student, right? And you in your high school community, people talking about different aspects of college. I think those are all fair. Like I don't want to like refute those. I'm just challenging students to dig in to those. Like think about why someone would tell you that a student to faculty ratio is important, right?
Hmm.
Like, who are you in the classroom? And are you self driven and perfectly an independent worker and are okay with walking into a 250-person lecture and writing notes and figuring out your own questions, having um, the ambition or the wherewithal or the independence and initiative to say, like, I'm going to go to office hours if I have a few questions and ask my professor?
Hmm.
Or are you going to work better in more of a high school type environment where there's only going to be 15 to 20 students in a majority of your classes and the professor is going to know your name the second week and like that's not necessarily like a 6-to-1 versus 8-to-1 student to faculty ratio in a brochure, but like we're thinking about those things because we're thinking about hopefully what type of environment am I going to thrive in? Like, who am I and what am I going to thrive in? Or do I want like my classroom experience to like not just be my professor's perspective, but do I want it to be like other my peers and my friends' perspective in
Hmm.
the classroom, right? Well, the 2 plus 2 is 4 at any college in America and any classroom in America, right? But there are certain things that a faculty member can do with a smaller class than that they can't do with a bigger class. So, like, what are the dynamics of that? And, like, how am I navigating through that? A college that tells me, like, objective, right? Like, oh, we're near a big city. Okay. But like, why do you specifically want to be near a big city, right? Like, why is
Yeah.
that sticking out to you beyond like, oh, I took a family vacation to Chicago or Boston or Miami once and like, I kind of liked it, right? Maybe you want it, maybe you're in a very career oriented major and you want to be close to a big city to be able to do an internship while you're balancing classes? Um, and is this college telling me they're near a big city and they're like a 2.5 hour train ride away and like that's not
Yeah. Yeah.
realistic? Or are they like right next to a big city and like I would be able to juggle that without getting too stressed out, right? And so, but answering all those questions at a deeper level goes beyond just like, oh, they're near Philly, you know?
Yeah. And you
Um,
think you're
and
supposed to,
like
you think
actually
that's like
thinking
where
about like why
yeah.
so those objective things and those surface level things are great. My challenge for students is think about those things in respect to how they pertain to you, because that's going to be a big part of your satisfaction on the college level, is like your engagement level with these things beyond just like I chose a college
Mhm.
because of that.
Yeah, and being kind of just a passive. consumer of this and just like letting it happen to you versus taking um an active role in the decision making, just because it's a big decision. It's a lot of time, a lot of money, resources for students, and you definitely don't want to be passive and just like do the things that you think. I think some students think about this, they think, how am I supposed to be thinking about this? And I think with
Yeah,
the city thing, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be thinking about jobs and internships and whatever. But like that's like maybe not I want like a smaller, more intentional community, and maybe I'm actually like would thrive in a suburban or rural environment, but I think I'm supposed to be doing this in a certain way. And like there's no like supposed to be, like it just depends on what you want. You're the one that's going to be going through this for 4 years,
for sure.
and experiencing it, not your parents, not your friends, it's you, and I know that's like a big decision to put on students' shoulders, but, there's time, and I think it's fun just to, like, think about these different possibilities if you reframe a little bit.
Yeah, and that goes back to your question about junior year too, right? It becomes fun and not overwhelming when you're leaving yourself of enough of a runway to do it before you've even thought about deadlines. And now all
Mhm,
these merit scholarships are popping up, and there's all this like, oh my god, I got to apply, I gotta like do it before that. Like know yourself, be introspective, think about yourself, think about what you want in a particular community before all that stuff comes, so it's not so overwhelming fall of your senior year.
yeah, no, absolutely, I'm curious. Sometimes I think it's interesting to think about things that you should stop doing, and I'm curious from your perspective for juniors, if there's one thing that, from your perspective, juniors should just like stop doing right now, not great for your search. What would that be?
Oh, yeah, um, I don't wanna completely say, like, stop reading Reddit, but there's some truth there's some
Yeah.
truth, but, I think certainly stop letting other people tell you, um, how to necessarily build a list. Like, it's okay to
Mhm,
let someone share advice on, "Oh, you should go look at this college." Okay, that's a tip. And then I'm going to go look into it, but don't necessarily on a surface level start making decisions about even the act of putting a college on your college list. That's a significant act, right? Like if we're
mhm.
talking in the ballpark of 10 to 12 colleges on a college list. And sometimes it makes sense for you to go fewer than that. And occasionally it makes sense for you to go above that. I get that. But let's say 8 to 10 to 12
Mhm.
colleges on a college list. That give yourself some credit. Like that's a big decision to put that college on the college. That's a big honor for that college that you put them on this, finite list of schools, right? So don't necessarily just put a college on a list without having engaged in that college or with that college on a deeper level than like, oh, someone told me I should apply there, right?
Yeah,
Or oh,
yeah,
someone told me, and when I say someone, either like uncle at the family barbecue or someone told me on Reddit or a
yeah,
ranking told
yeah.
me, right? Or ChatGPT told me. ChatGPT can be v- very useful in a college search if you engage with it accurately, right? But like ChatGPT is only finding stuff that's on websites, and some colleges write their websites to ChatGPT better than other colleges do, right? So you're not
Yeah, a lot of
necessarily
hallucinations.
yeah, so, well, you're not necessarily, um, getting the accurate vibe or picture of what you're actually without digging into that a little bit more, right? So you can take leads, you can take tips, but don't necessarily behave like putting together a college list is this like community act where I just get advice from here, put it on, get advice from here, put it on without doing your due diligence and respect to yourself to dig in and say like, do I actually want this on, right? Or
Yeah,
so so many times people aren't necessarily thinking about you as an individual and who you are and how you're going to best grow in the next 4 years, right? They have an experience, they're associated to one particular school, and they're offering their advice. The other thing I would say is, um, stop necessarily, thinking about, like, going back to this template, right? Is
Mhm.
stop necessarily thinking about people that might be in your world who didn't get into X college. Stop thinking that, like, "Oh, that rules me out,"
Yeah,
right?
good advice for
So
parents too.
yes, great advice for parents. They're, you know, the inverse of us, like, the people on YouTube say, that have like way more views than like even like our own college's content that we put out with current students of like, this is the essay I wrote to get me into Northwestern University. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, that essay was certainly part of your story and application, but like the idea that that like completely drove your decision. For the same parallel, like, so many students will say like, "Oh, this person ahead of me, the valedictorian in my school ahead of me, you know, didn't get into school X and they had 14 APs. So that must mean I need 16 APs," and then
Yeah.
that's part of the mental health crisis of assuming that that was why they didn't get into school X. They're a completely different person than you. They might not have been the right fit. It was not necessarily the 14 APs that wasn't
Mhm.
enough for that college, right? Nothing. We can talk about like admit decisions and deny decisions. I always say like a deny decision does not invalidate you in this process. It does not mean you weren't good enough. We just go back to kind of the idea that there's not a template. These colleges have a finite number of spaces in their first year classes, and they are responsible for building a class. And sometimes there are factors out of your control. And sometimes those factors that are out of your control actually help you in a process, especially if you found colleges that fit you appropriately. So you don't necessarily know why a decision was made with a student the year prior, right? Um, do yourself a service and again ground this process in
Yep.
yourself and don't like look at anybody else as a reason for why you should or should not apply to a school if it's a meaningful school to put on your college list in terms of this really fits you.
Yeah. I remember a tough conversation with a parent when I was on this counseling side. This kid had like, top grades in school, like a 36 ACT, and just like, it was he got into like he wound up going to an Ivy League school, but was unhappy he did not get into more Ivy League schools. I sat his dad down. I was like, look at like I think it was Brown at the time published the percent of students who were rejected who had a perfect 36. And it was like over 80% of them. And just like it was, like, a little, like, more brutal than I, like, normally would be, but, like, it just was a good reminder that it's not, like it feels very personal, it's not personal, and just, like, the reality at these schools is they're still rejecting the vast majority of students with perfect test takers.
Yep. And
And you
not
look at,
because
like, the
they don't think you're good enough,
No,
right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
they get fired if if they admit too many people. They don't have
Yeah.
they don't have beds on campus to, like, bring you
Yeah, and,
in.
like, you just don't know, and I think especially at the highly selective schools, and I think this is something people sometimes get, like, upset about or don't like to hear, but the earl especially, like, binding early decision options, like, that does help, and that was, I think, for students who are competitive and interested in a highly selective school, like that is just like a very tangible thing that you can control. To early part of the conversation, that you just look at the numbers and it goes back to for predictability for the college. Colleges like want students who really want to be there, and that was always that was this this student I just referenced. They did not apply early decision anywhere, and that just like it was like a brutal regular decision process, just because that just is going to be like that for almost every student at highly selective schools. And I think, you want to make sure you do your homework and you're not just applying to the school just to give yourself a better shot. But it is just like a reminder, I think that that is something that you can control as a option in the admissions process.
Totally.
Um, well, as we wrap up, Andrew, I'm curious for the juniors out there and their parents. Like, you know, some of these tools like use them smart, like ChatGPT and Reddit. What other resources do you think that students? I guess is our last question. What other resources do you think students underuse in the process that you think can make a big difference?
Yeah, I honestly, like, kind of from my perspective and things that I've kind of, just observed over the 16 years that I've been in the field, honestly, primary sources, right? Like,
Mhm,
there are and I'm thinking of, like, 2 different groups specifically, that really are, like, in it for the right reasons and have authentic factual intel that can really help a student, right? So, and I'm not, this is not me saying don't use ChatGPT, don't use the internet. Like those are all amazing tools, and you can figure out a lot. And in a large part, those will lead your college search. But I'm thinking of the first group of counselors on the high school side. And I would say your high school counselor if it's available to you, but I would
mhm,
also group community-based organization counselors into this conversation. There are so many great community-based organizations out there, that if you are eligible or have access to one that will really help guide you. They're knowledgeable, they're in touch with college admission officers, they know a lot of colleges and scholarships and ways to navigate the process, that just give you support, right? And that's so often what you need in this process. If I go to a website, I don't have support. I'm like going into that cold, right? If I'm talking to ChatGPT, I get maybe a teeny bit more support if it knows the right questions to ask. In some cases, it does. If you know how to engage with it, interact with it. But support is so big in this process. Like adults who have either been through it or it's their professional duty to and job to like know about this stuff and guide you professionally. Um, Yes, it's used, but it's underutilized in my opinion, right? And then the from the college side, college admission officers. College admission
yep,
officers are not in higher education. They are not working for these colleges to get rich, right? They are in this fundamentally because at some point in their professional journey, they cared about making a difference in students' lives, right? And guiding them and ushering them to the right places in a monumental chapter of a human being's life. And more often than not, I think too often college admission officers are thought of as salespeople,
yeah,
and not the part of them that is in that job is not celebrated enough that they actually just like want to help people, right? And sometimes it's help people like them that they identified with that they wish they had this support in the college search process. And you can get on most college websites now, from wherever you live geographically and find who is responsible for the applications or the prospective students in state X, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to reach out to this person. And oftentimes you can get an answer from them and you can start asking them questions about their school. You can start asking them questions about the college process. And oftentimes in an email exchange, get a decent amount of information from them.
mhm,
Um, so whether it's, an email exchange with a college admission officer, whether it's, spending a couple extra minutes after a campus tour talking to the admission officer on duty, you're going to and even if you don't end up applying to that college, you're going to start learning things about colleges that you might gravitate to and like, or that you might dislike at a level beyond just like a data point or a stat in a view book or on a website. And to me, that's the most important part of the college search is starting to identify what these data points or stats mean for me in my experience at a particular college. And so often, the most productive conversations come with people who know this process intimately, right?
mhm,
Um, Advising and support is such a big deal in the college search process, too, like in finding your fit for so many people, right? Like, okay, I can study abroad, but what if I'm 18 and I have no idea how to study abroad, or I want to do research because I like I've always been interested or curious or researching this search. I mean, you tell me you have $3 million a year for undergraduate research. How does that look for an undergraduate though? Right? Like, are professors and graduate students taking that? Do
Mhm.
I have guidance? Do I know when I'm 18, I'm not going to know how to apply for a research grant? How are you helping me through that? Right. So, we're talking about advising and support on the college level. Those are questions I would challenge you to ask, of these colleges, right? And don't just give me the infomercial. Tell me how it's going to look for me, for who I am, the background that I'm coming from, the perspective I'm bringing to campus. What's that support system going to look like for me when I'm on that campus? But then also, what's my support system in going through this college search process? And so often there are these primary sources in this college search process that are underutilized and they're readily available. You just need to show the initiative to reach out to them.
Yeah, no, I love the reminder about, even if like you might attend a school where, counseling, there's a lot of students per counselor and counselors might be hard to get in touch with. Admissions officers, financial aid officers, they, so helpful. Even if it's something that's like more like general, like just specific thing. If you're a junior and you're not sure what classes you're going to take as a senior year, like that's like a great question just to like ask and will probably be relevant at like you can get an answer from one college and like for college we can think about it a little bit differently, but you probably get an answer that is going to be helpful at other colleges as well. If you have a complicated like FAFSA question, you don't need to hire like a personal financial advisor. You can probably get a lot of you and your family can probably get a lot of great questions asked from financial aid folks, and they're not like admissions financial aid. They're not looking to like get you or deny you or not like using this to like hold it against you. Like they genuinely are there to help. And one of my observations on the admission side was like I think like too few students unfortunately like took advantage of that in the
Yeah,
process, and they're just like such a like wealth of like free information, resources, and support. And also just like not this that the reason that you do it, but definitely doesn't hurt for someone who's like helping make decisions and advocating for students. Certainly doesn't hurt to have them, getting to know you a little bit better as a human being.
100%. Well said.
Um, well, this has been great, Andrew. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us. We'll definitely include a link to some of the content, especially on YouTube that Northwestern's putting out. I know that as a team, you've made a lot of like big investments and just like content to help students. Is there anything else you'd like to plug?
I love that. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's one of the things we've worked really hard on in the last 5 to 7 years, as we understand that your generation. When I'm talking about your generation, I'm talking to the students here. That your generation demands transparency and authenticity and personalization more than ever in this process. We've worked really hard to give you those parts of the search process. So everything that like I talked about, primary sources in guiding you through the college application process, but also primary sources in finding your fit. Again, it was the silver lining of the pandemic. All these colleges had to catch up with where to meet you and the best avenue to meet you, right? So we've really worked on, making our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Northwestern Admissions, not the main Northwestern YouTube channel, but the Northwestern Admissions YouTube channel, is chock full of student panels and campus tours from students who come from different parts of the country and majors in different things and mock lectures and all of that stuff. But there are also so many members of our community that you can connect with, and just have a FaceTime with. Like, you don't need to have the resources to come visit campus if that's not like realistic for you. You just need to be
Mhm.
willing to spend 30 to 45 minutes talking with an alum that went through the Northwestern experience and has a part of shares a part of your identity with you, right? Or an academic interest. If I'm really interested in pre-med or business and I want to talk to a Northwestern alum about that, you can go on our website. You can go to the visit and engage tab of our website and register for an in-depth conversation with alums, current students who share your interests, right? And I would hope that more and more colleges get to this point where you can go beyond, the current student on YouTube saying this is why I got into Northwestern versus
Mhm.
the student who like, hey, I'll jam with you about 30 minutes and be real with you about like what this experience is like, right? And if I'm a first generation student, what is this experience like for a first generation student, right? If I'm a Black identifying student or a student interested in engineering, like what is that world like? And you can learn so much from those conversations that go beyond, again, like the line on the website or the listing of majors or things like that, which is an important gateway, but really encourage you at this point in this time in the college search process to use those luxuries that are available to you that
Yeah.
have never been available to any generation before in the college search process. Is like talk to the people in the communities.
Yeah, no, you're gonna be going to college with people, like, it's all in really it's a very human experience, and, yeah, trying to approach your search in a human-centric way, I think is great advice for students.
Great.
Well, yeah, really appreciate the time, Andrew. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. You too. All the best,
Yeah,
everyone.
take care, bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of Office Hours with Will Geiger. If you're a student or parent, don't forget to check out app.scholarships360.org, where you can sign up for our free scholarship matching platform. For colleges, we've got solutions to make your work easier, which you can check out at connect.scholarships360.org. And one last thing, if you or someone you know would make a great guest on the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can always reach me by email or on LinkedIn. Until next time, thanks again for listening.